What from this current year do you consider your biggest accomplishments?
I'm very proud of the legislation that we passed this fall. The Education Act, you don't pass an Education Act very often. That becomes foundational. The other piece of work that was very important was the work on responsible energy development, Bill number 2, where we actually changed the way that we will assess the regulatory process around energy or energy projects and the infrastructure related to them. That is fundamental to our ability to be competitive. The other thing that I'm very proud of was something that just happened yesterday, and that was the meeting with First Nations and with Grand Chiefs.
And it was very clear, I think, during the election campaign you were going to balance the budget, and
Yep.
starting next year, a
Yep.
balanced budget. Now you're talking about balancing the operational side of it.
Yeah, that's right.
Do you think Albertans going to understand that, or do you have to do a lot of explaining that, in fact, you're still maintaining your promise, or in fact,
Yeah.
have you broken that promise?
No,
Make
we
it
haven't.
explain.
You know, I think what Albertans see is what's going on in the world, which is, you know, we see a federal budget that has an additional $6 billion in projected deficit. Our second quarterly report has talked about an additional projected deficit because of this differential in the price of oil. We haven't come out of this global economic crisis as quickly as everyone thought we would. And if we think back to the discussions in early spring, people were much more optimistic about what was going to happen at the end of this year than now. So yeah, the world's changed. And when the world changes, responsible government talks about how to make sure that we're still able to meet the goals that Albertans set for us. And what Albertans talked about was making sure that we could provide services, which we can do on an operational side that's balanced, and to continue to invest in infrastructure in a way that's going to let us grow into the future, to put in place a responsible plan that's going to allow for schools and libraries and clinics to be built, the twinning of highways that matter to our economy, and to make sure that we have a plan to pay that back and to be sensible about it. So we're not borrowing for operating. In fact, we're continuing to be able to provide services that matter to Albertans, and those are the priorities that Albertans set for us in the provincial election, and that's what we're going to meet. I mean, our budget is a $40 billion budget. It is driving the Canadian economy, and it requires an awful lot of work and thought and long-term strategy with a pretty strong cabinet. That's what I think about every day. I've always said, whether I was talking to people in the United States or people in Asia or people in different parts of Canada, Alberta's an export economy, and it's important for us to be able to get our product to market. I was really encouraged to be in the Maritimes and talk to Atlantic premiers and to the Premier of Quebec about not only how supportive they would be of product being piped east, but how excited they are about it. Now, I will say Quebec's doing some work, but Atlantic premiers cannot wait for this project to go ahead. So I think there's really good prospects for the future. None of them are short-term. That's not what pipelines are about. But yeah, absolutely, it's feasible.
So one or the other, is it go east or west, or do you do both?
Of course you do both. You know, we're a jurisdiction that has the third largest reserves in the world. We certainly have the capacity to go both ways or either way. You know, we have, quite frankly, too high a rate of domestic violence in this province. I think it's still the highest in the country. That is unacceptable. And that's what we're going to change.
Why is it so high here? What's driving that? Why is it so
Well,
high?
better to talk to experts on that than me. But I mean, there's no doubt that part of it is the heating of the economy, the fact that people feel under a great deal of pressure. I mean, if we think about the things that tend to cause social disharmony in a family, a lot of it does have to do with the way that the economy works here. You know, there's a lot of people under a lot of pressure working hard, and it's not a direct attribution. It's just a very busy society.
You said a year ago, we have to have farm workers protected.
Mm-hmm.
You said a little while ago, when the time is right, we'll do it. Why haven't you done that? That was a very clear election promise, or a very clear leadership promise. Why haven't you moved to protect the farm workers?
Because right now there's work going on between stakeholders, between farm workers, with people in the agricultural community, with our own departments, trying to figure out what the best way forward is. And you know, quite frankly, I think of all of the commitments that we made, we're going to stand by our commitments. But I'll tell you, the answer is not simply because someone stands up and says, oh, well, you promised this, it's 6 months later, you haven't delivered yet. we're going to put in place the right approaches at the right time. We're not going to find ways to avoid making commitments, but we are going to do the right thing. And sometimes those are short term, sometimes they're medium term, and sometimes they're longer term.
So you will do it. You actually then will move to protect the paid farm workers.
We have to protect paid farm workers. No issue with that at all.
What are the 3 things you want to have accomplished in 2013?
Well, you're going to see that the decisions that we made with respect to budget and fiscal framework were the right decisions. You're going to see the implementation of a significant number of our family care clinics. You're going to see, I think, dramatic changes with respect to some of the work that's happening right now on social policy. And I think you're going to see a very different approach, not only in Alberta, but across Canada with respect to marketing our energy.
Anything else you want to add that we haven't asked you about?
Merry Christmas.
Thank you.